You're listening to Systemic Era Podcast. The failure was designed.
A cruel irony sits at the heart of Trump's holy war by Sabrina Haake. When church and state overlap, brutality follows and justice bends with the whip. Blurred lines between religion and government produced the Spanish Inquisition, the Salem witch trials, the Crusades, the Huguenot persecutions, and the brutality campaigns of the Holy Roman Empire, to list an easy few, all featuring sadism, torture, and bloodlust in the name of religion. The centuries have proved that entangling religious dogma with state power always leads to brutal oppression. That's why founders of our republic, who keenly understood the danger, wrote, as the very first constitutional guarantee, that church and state would remain forever separated. So when Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and U.S. military commanders pressure U.S. troops to conform with their own Christian fundamentalist beliefs, they not only spit on the Constitution they've sworn to uphold, they beckon history's darkest years with a blind compulsion to repeat them. Armageddon in Iran? Religious extremism has taken Iran back to the 7th century, yet somehow, even as Trump tries to topple Iran's brutal theocracy, his own Christian nationalists can't see that their own agenda leads to the same place. Hegseth, a far-right Christian zealot with extremist views and tattoos, is now running the DoD and spreading a dangerous message. Hegseth airs monthly prayer meetings on loudspeakers and televisions throughout the Pentagon. Attending his prayer meetings in person is voluntary, but apparently listening to them isn't. Hegseth proselytizes evangelical Christianity throughout the upper ranks of the U.S. military, so it comes as no surprise that his commanders are now doing the same. Right after the U.S. and Israel started bombing Iran, several commanders in the U.S. military started framing the war as biblical, spreading the message throughout every branch. According to more than 200 complaints filed with the Military Religious Freedom Foundation (MRFF), first reported by Jonathan Larson, U.S. combat unit commanders urged officers in more than 50 separate military installations to tell U.S. troops that the war in Iran is all part of God's divine plan, specifically citing the Book of Revelation on Armageddon and the imminent return of Jesus Christ. The commanders want U.S. troops to know that Trump has been anointed by Jesus to light the signal fire in Iran to cause Armageddon and mark his return to Earth. While this may finally solve the mystery of why Trump took us to war with Iran in the first place, proselytizing, using the military to spread Christian nationalism, blatantly violates the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment. It also propels the U.S. toward theocracy, just as we're fighting a war in Iran against it. Is it too much to expect such irony to announce itself? A teachable moment for MAGA. Life under theocratic rule has always been dark, and Iran is no exception. If Trump, Hegseth, and his commanders took a moment to study their targets, they would know that Shia Islam law permeates Iran's entire political system, and it won't be easily undone. In Iran, all laws and regulations conform with the official interpretation of Sharia Islamic law. A body of clerics and jurists known as the Guardian Council reviews all proposed legislation for conformity with Islamic principles, subjecting all aspects of Iranian life to religious control, including the legislative process, judicial system, banking, education, commerce, the military, and politics, whether local, regional, or national. Ayatollahs, mullahs, and clerics interpret the law. They do not tolerate differences in opinion. Under the Islamic Penal Code, adulterers can be publicly stoned to death. Women can be executed for showing their hair or too much skin, and any conduct that amounts to corruption on earth, including peaceful activism, is punishable by death. Enforcement on the streets is carried out by roving bands of armed thugs called morality police or guidance patrols. Radicals who enforce the rules, mete out punishment, and haul the accused away. Is a comparison with ICE, Trump's own street militia, unfair? Dissent viewed as heresy. Hegseth, Trump, and MAGA Christo-nationalists want to tear down the constitutional wall between church and state because, like centuries of monarchs and bad actors before them, they think citing God's divine will excuses their illegal conduct and adds legitimacy to their mission of oppression. Domestically, They have already begun to use extreme violence and the suppression of personal freedoms. If they are not stopped, torture and public executions will follow. Trump is already seeking to outlaw political dissent, criticism, and opposition, just as Iranian extremists have done. He is also increasing Christian nationalist messaging throughout the White House, as Caroline Leavitt and Pam Bondi brandish crucifixes and Hegseth's commanders claim God wants them to bloody Iranians. It all looks like a sick dress rehearsal for when Trump claims the divine right to imprison or worse critics and political opponents at home. Right after reports of American casualties in Iran started peppering headlines, Hegseth urged the media to stop obsessing over fallen U.S. soldiers, suggesting they focus instead on the death and destruction being wrought by U.S. air power. The ghoulish subtext, troops dying in Iran is expected and violence is entertainment. It's all part of God and Trump's plan. For the rest of us, it's also a real-time illustration of why the First Amendment must be protected at all costs. Sabrina Haake is a columnist and 25-plus-year federal trial attorney specializing in First and 14th defense. She writes the Substack, The Haake Take.
Our analysis: the unholy alliance, when faith dictates warfare. In an era where the separation of church and state should be clearer than ever, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and U.S. military commanders are blurring the lines with a fervor that would make the architects of the Spanish Inquisition nod in approval. This isn't merely about pushing boundaries. It's a full-throttle drive into theocracy, with the U.S. military as its chariot. Hegseth, a far-right Christian zealot at the helm. Labeling Pete Hegseth a far-right Christian zealot might seem harsh until you consider the evidence laid bare. Hegseth's monthly prayer meetings, broadcasts throughout the Pentagon like a divine directive, are not just a nod to his beliefs but a clarion call to his version of Christianity. The idea that attendance is voluntary while the broadcast is unavoidable is as laughable as it is terrifying. It speaks volumes about the environment being fostered under his leadership, an environment where evangelical Christianity isn't just a personal faith, but a state-sponsored creed. Biblical warfare, a dangerous narrative. The narrative being spun by U.S. military commanders, as detailed in the article, transforms the conflict with Iran from geopolitical struggle to biblical prophecy fulfillment. This isn't just dangerous, it's a stark misuse of power that muddies the waters of rational policymaking with the oil of religious extremism. Over 200 complaints to the Military Religious Freedom Foundation underscore the severity of this issue. If the commanders truly believe that Trump has been anointed by Jesus to light the signal fire in Iran to cause Armageddon, we're not just at the brink of a geopolitical conflict, but a religious war, sanctioned by those at the highest echelons of American military power. The irony of fighting a theocracy by becoming one. The article points out the supreme irony of the U.S. stance against Iran's theocracy while simultaneously marching toward its own version of a theocratic state. This isn't just ironic. It's a chilling reminder of history's darkest moments when rulers justified oppression, violence, and tyranny by claiming divine sanction. The comparison between Iran's Sharia law and the Christian nationalist agenda being pushed by Trump and Hegseth reveals a shared willingness to suppress dissent and control the populace through religious dogma. Domestic implications, a preview of oppression. Domestic policies under this administration, as highlighted by the article, suggest a dangerous trend toward suppressing dissent and freedom in the name of divine will. The mention of ICE as Trump's own street militia is a stark comparison that, while provocative, underscores the severity of the administration's approach to enforcement and control. If Hegseth and his ilk are unchecked, the U.S. could see a rise in the very atrocities, torture, public executions we condemn in others. Constitutional crisis, the First Amendment under siege. The article ends on a note that should resonate with every American, regardless of political or religious affiliation. The First Amendment, the very foundation of American freedom, is under direct threat. Hegseth's disdain for media coverage of U.S. casualties, urging focus instead on the death and destruction wrought by U.S. forces, is not just insensitive, it's a grotesque misrepresentation of what America stands for. It's a call to arms for those who believe in the Constitution to stand up and protect it from those who would use their power to mold the country into their own theocratic vision. In summary, the article paints a dire picture of a United States teetering on the edge of becoming what it has long condemned. The separation of church and state is not just a legal requirement, it's a safeguard against the kind of brutal oppression and tyranny that has marred human history. If Hegseth, Trump, and their commanders are allowed to continue down this path, the U.S. risks becoming a mirror image of the regimes it seeks to change or destroy. This isn't just about protecting constitutional guarantees, it's about preserving the very soul of the nation. You've been listening to Systemic Error. Thanks to Raw Story for today's article with the automated voices of Amy and Ryan. Thanks for listening.